We are pleased to welcome him to our convention. It is my very real pleasure to introduce our Commissioner of Education, Gordon M. Ambach.
Thank you very kindly, Jerry, and a good evening to you all. Honored guests, Althea Gibson, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege once again to be with you at this annual meeting, and it's been my privilege to be with you, those of you who were at our conversation with the Commissioner this afternoon. This occasion provides one more opportunity for me to extend my thanks to you for your service to education. Our system of educational governance is built on two very key concepts. The first is that the control of policy in education has a certain separation from other aspects of governmental activity, and the second is that the control of education is in the hands of lay boards. Those two fundamental concepts of education cannot be maintained without the kind of commitment that you all make in the service of education. And we in New York State are deeply in your debt for the sacrifice and the commitment to meet that responsibility. You serve as local stewards of education, but you also serve in a role which is as state officials. And because of that, it is ever so important that we, members of the Board of Regents and my staff, and you meet together in this annual meeting. We meet in our regional conferences. We meet as representatives of this association gather in Albany or at other places to discuss very important issues of parent education or teaching certification and performance. We meet in so many ways because it is absolutely essential that both at state and at local levels we have a fit, we have a match between our objectives and our means of implementation. Your conference theme on accountability and community confidence is an extremely important theme for this year. We all know that as we leave this convention site and return to our districts or to our BOCES or to our other workplaces and to meet the grinding issues that we'll know we'll be meeting, that we'll be hearing concerns about whether in fact the current practice of education is meeting our expectations, that it is in fact building confidence. And we will be hearing criticisms of what is currently going on in education. I'd like to leave just two thoughts with you this evening as we prepare to leave this convention. One of the thoughts has to do with being certain that we put in perspective what is happening in education in this state and in this nation, put it in perspective so that we can see where we've been and where we've come during the course of the past 2 centuries. And then I would like to make a point that has to do with our ideals. I've just returned from a 3-day educational conference which was held just outside of London. Representatives of the United Kingdom, of Denmark, of France, of Holland were gathered. We happened to be discussing adult education primarily. But what struck me in that conference, and it does so every time one leaves the United States, is that when you look back on what's happened in this nation, by way of access, by way of equality of opportunity, by way of the achievement that has come through these 2 centuries. And even when one compares that with our neighboring countries in Western Europe, you recognize what an incredible achievement there has been. And when you look at the developing nations of this world, you see even more what has happened. In some 200 years, we've taken a nation which had a 15% literacy rate among adults and now have a nation with an 85% literacy rate. If you look at our economic growth and you match 1900 with a labor force of 15% professionals and skilled workers, and now a labor force that has some 65 to 70% skilled labor force and professional workers, you can see what a change there's been, and you know that change hasn't occurred except for the fact of our educational system. And if you look at one other factor, the political stability of this nation, a democratic nation which is based on an informed and reasoning public, and you see a nation which over 2 centuries has had the most stable government ever to exist on this planet, then you recognize what has happened as a product of the educational system. Of course, it's not all we want it to be. We wouldn't be here together if that were true. We have the need of maintaining quality. We have the need of extending service to those who are not well served. And it brings us to a matter of considering what must be done, but consider it against these ideals. The German poet Goethe long ago wrote, "If you treat an individual as he will stay as he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be." We will not solve our immediate troubles unless we live with ideals such as that, or an ideal such as stated back in 1948 while he was a student in college by Martin Luther King Jr., who wrote, "Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from fiction. The function of education, therefore, is to teach one to think critically. We must remember that intelligence, however, is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." So it is with a sense of perspective of history, but perhaps more important, it is a sense of carrying ideals that I urge we leave this convention, and that we who work at the state level join with you in service at the local and regional level to meet those ideals, those goals yet to be achieved. Thank you.